everyone. This is Matthew Cruz at Comstock Investments. I'm going to be sharing with you the June supply demand report that came out this morning at 11 a.m. I'll let you quickly read through this disclaimer. Futures trading does involve risk. So starting out looking at the 2022-23 grain ending stocks overall, this is a pretty neutral report. The trade was very close to coming in what USDA came with their numbers. So you can see here that trade was at 1.443 with their average estimate. USDA came in at 1.452 billion bushels. And so very close, not much change. So there's pretty muted market reaction today. Beans came in at 230. You can see very close to the estimate 223. And similar in the wheat, came in at 598 versus 605. Looking ahead to this season or this next season here, the 23-24 grain ending stocks, that's mostly what the market is looking at now. Similar situation, the average trade was at 2.246 billion bushels in the corn and came in at 2.257. So a very modest increased higher. And in the beans came in at 340 versus the USDA at 350. So pretty close overall, and so not a lot of market reaction. Didn't really change the direction of the morning markets. So wheat came in at 571 with the average trade estimates versus 562 with the USDA. Looking at production in Brazil and Argentina, Brazil soybeans, they bumped it up modestly to 156 million metric tons. Not too far from what the trade was expecting. Corn, a little bit of a surprise higher. They came in at 132. The average trade was at 130.8. So it was a little bit skeptical earlier on that Brazilian corn could reach these numbers just with some of the late planting in Paraná. However, they've been getting pretty good rains here lately, a little bit later than normal, and so that's kind of helped the crop there advance. USDA did finally begin to reduce their estimates on Argentinian production, which last month's report, we thought it was disappointing that they didn't decrease those. They're still not as low as they need to be, so I think we'll see further adjustments in subsequent reports, but they've been very slow to increase those. So basically the decrease in Argentine production is offset by modest increase in Brazil's production, and so they kind of offset each other. But some of the private estimates for Argentinian soybeans are at 21 million metric tons, and so they could easily downgrade Argentina's soybean crop another 4 million metric tons. And similar situation in the corn, they're at 35. And they could decrease that another 2 million metric tons. And so that's where we're at. Looking at the global ending stocks, a little bit of a typo there. So it should be about 313.4 million metric tons for the average estimate. So very close to what it came in actual. Same way with the soybeans, global ending stocks at 122, increased that to 123.3. And there was more of a bigger increase in global ending stocks for wheat. They were at 264. They increased that to 270. You can see Chinese imports are unchanged from last month, but up from last year's estimates. So at looking for China to buy 23 million metric tons of our corn and 100 million metric tons of our soybeans. So breaking down what actually changed and why, this is the corn balance sheet. And so I didn't put together, they're still making adjustments from last year's crop. And so they actually decreased corn imports in the United States, but they decreased our corn exports by another 50 million bushels. And so that basically adds another 35 million bushels in ending stocks from last year's crop, which gets added on to our beginning stocks. And that's what the adjustments that we see here, that's all that they changed. And so there's a lot of chatter around changing or adjusting lower our corn production estimates at 181.5 bushels per acre, just because of the drought, of course, that's taking place in the Midwest. but it wasn't impossible for USDA to make adjustments lower, but we all know they're pretty slow at making these adjustments, and so I don't think we're going to see anything until next month's report from them in terms of adjusting yield lower. But I think enough uh, uh, drought has taken place that they are going to have to make accommodations, and we're already seeing some private estimates. Two bushels lower or more in corn, and one or 1.5 bushels lower in soybeans. And so I think there's time for this crop to recover. There is some rain in the forecast. I know not everybody's going to get it, but the market is, I think, going to look at it and say, okay, enough people are getting something to get them by, and but I still, on the other hand, I think there's enough damage has taken place that I think 181.5 probably isn't doable anymore. And so, it wasn't a surprise to us that USDA left it unchanged, because we know they're pretty slow at making those changes. But I do think that you'll see they'll have to make some adjustments here by next month. And so so the only change for the ending stocks here was that 35 million bushels from lowering exports from last season here. And so that's what takes our ending stocks higher to 2.257. So not a huge jump from what the trade was looking for, but obviously we would prefer it be 35 million bushels less rather than 35 million bushels more. So looking at the soybeans, they again, similar situation to the corn. They decreased our soybean exports by 15 million bushels from the 22-23 marketing season, and so that increases carries over to our beginning stocks. As you can see here, that takes us from 215 to 230. So that's the only adjustment. They did not make any yield adjustment, any acreage adjustments, and so that takes us down from this 335 million bushels to 350. Again, I think that the ending stocks and soybeans are so tight right now, and with the drought situation that's ongoing, that an argument can easily be made that we've lost 1 bushel, maybe even more, in our national yield. And so, again, if we lose 1 bushel, we're talking 87 million bushels, and so that would drop off of this here. And so that is a pretty big change, and then it easily reduces our carryover, our ending stocks back to what they were last year. And so that's why long term, I think we're still moderately or cautiously bullish in the case of the soybeans. It's a little bit more difficult to make that case in the corn though. And so, but again, USDA is kind of kicking the can down the road. They weren't, this flash drought happened quickly, and so they weren't ready to make any adjustments in the yield. But I think you'll have to see that here next month at some point. Looking at the wheat, some minor adjustments, increasing wheat yield here. Didn't amount to a whole much, increasing production by 6 million bushels here. And you can see that they added that to the bottom line, 556 to 562. So not no major surprises there, just some modest rearranging the deck chairs, I guess, here. Looking at December corn, this is not the close, but we spent most of the day down. The report coming out didn't really change that. There wasn't a lot of market reaction. We're down 6 at this time, and so we'll have to see where we close. But you can see that there's pretty strong resistance at this 549 level, and the market rallied here, bounced off that, and now it's kind of trying to juggle the weather and between pending rains here in the forecast that could provide a recovery versus yield damage that may or may not have already occurred. And so that's where we find ourselves here. But so we're now in this trading range between this 550 and this 550 level. To see continued recovery, we need to move back above and eventually break above this 549, 550 level in the December corn. Looking at the soybeans, this is not the close again, but at this time we've been up most of the day, been up 7 3/4 in the November beans. Looks like we're starting to break above potentially some of this resistance levels. Be nice to see us move higher, but we're going to run into some major resistance at this 1245, 1250 area in the November beans. But as I pointed out, even if we lose 1, potentially 2 bushels to the national yield, that's going to send our ending stocks back to what they were last year when we were experiencing $14 per bushel. And so I think there's potential for that. We have to see how the rains come here next week, but I just think with that enough drought damage is taking place that it's fair to shave off something off of yield. Now, potentially they can offset that by reducing crushings or exports as well, and so we have to take that into consideration. A lot of this talk is just about yield, but it's not quite that simple, right? We got to look at demand as well, and so. But I think if you shave off 2 bushels per acre, there is an argument that we can go back up to this $14 level in November beans, but that is yet to be seen. So looking at the wheat, we had a sharp sell-off here on Wednesday at this 680 area, and we're up 10 for the moment, but we need wheat to corn's been following the wheat pretty closely. And so we need wheat to find a bottom here and begin to rally. There's been reports that China is buying more wheat for feed usage. And so hopefully that, will help lead a rally here. But, but at the moment, we just aren't finding any support at these levels. And so ideally like to break back above this 680 level to be able to sustain a bottom moving forward. So if you're a bull, you're going to, of course, talk about the drought. That's where most of the trade focus is on right now, is the pending drought. And we are in a full-fledged weather market. The Weather Service came out saying that as much as 45% of our corn area is in some sort of drought. The next major report to come out is the acreage report here at the end of June. And we'll get to see if the USDA makes any adjustments to acres, which there is a possibility considering some of the late planting that took place in North Dakota. They could easily reduce corn acres by 1 million acres, and so that would provide a lot of support to the corn market. So, of course, there's a lot of ups and downs of what's going on in the Ukraine war. Every week Russia threatens to shut that grain corridor down. However, at the same time, it's not a very efficient method of shipping out corn anymore. And so we have, regardless of it's opened or closed, we are seeing those exports slow down from the Ukraine. Talking about if you're a bear, you might argue, okay, while it is dry, how big is this drought area? And I just mentioned that because the drought monitor area actually has our farm in Northwest Iowa within that drought area, which isn't really that accurate because we've gotten some good rains here recently. And so, we're sitting pretty good where I'm at, but yet the weather drought maps have us within that drought area. And so perhaps that drought area isn't quite as big as what they think. And so we also see some moisture coming on the way, I think, over the weekend and early next week. By Monday, there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to get at least an inch of rain. Now, I don't think it's going to be everywhere. And so, unfortunately, they're going to, it seems to be pretty spotty yet. But the market and the trade is going to look at that and say, okay, did enough people get it? That is going to provide some recovery. Yeah, we know not everybody got it, but that's usually how it works. If enough people, if the trade thinks enough areas got that relief that were really hurting, then that could be enough to kind of spoil the rally. Um, but yeah, and of course, always got to look at what's going on in Brazil. They continue to increase the estimates for production in Brazil as well. So want to thank everyone for watching. I hope you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out at 712-227-1110, or you can subscribe to our report at comstock.com. Thank you and have a nice day.